there's a quote you have on the wall in your reformer studio, I think it is, that says, do something today that your future self will thank you for. And I often think about that when I'm in class. And do you know what? I think it makes me work a little bit harder.
Do you?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
because even if it feels hard in that moment, I think about how Pilates I know is doing me good in the longer term, and that the benefits are going to be far reaching. But that said, you won't be surprised to learn that I'm a fan of an instant result, a quick fix.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes I am pleased to say that Pilates does give me that, or can give me that. There've been times recently where, I've been struggling with sciatica or a stiff neck, and I've come to class and miraculously I leave and feel well again. But ultimately, I know that Pilates is an investment in my future self, even though it can give me that almost instant fix. My well-being, physically, mentally. I know this, but I'm not really sure still, like how or why. So how does it work? How does the magic work in the short and the long term?
I love that. How does the magic work? Because it does feel like magic.
Yeah.
How can you go from feeling, like you said, the sciatic pain or an achy neck to then get up off the reformer and go, oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
I'm fine again. So Pilates is like the prevention and the preparation, and it gives you resilience for older age. And right now, it's making you resilient right now.
Okay.
In the way that you can come to class and then leave feeling better. So when you're moving, you're rehydrating your body. When you sit still at a desk, and we talk about this so often, don't we? Because that is the world that you're living in. It's the world that many people are living in, where you're sat developing that chair shape. And when you are not moving, you're not hydrating. You're not getting the fluids into your body that keep you healthy, that keep you young, that keep you mobile, that make you feel good. And then when you do something like, to use the sciatic example, I mean, so many people, in fact, we must look this up, how many, what's the statistics on the number of people with sciatica? Because in the studio, I know loads of people come to it because they have sciatica. So sciatica is basically, like total basic terms, it's when the sciatic nerve gets strangled, and sitting strangles it. So then you get onto the reformer and you start moving all of the structures around where that sciatic nerve runs through your hip. You get fluid flow, you get movement there, you free it up, it's not strangled anymore. Bob's your uncle, you're not in pain anymore. It's so simple. But then it's not something that we kind of know, is it?
No. So what would be the difference then? You're saying it's the movement that gets the fluids going.
Yeah.
So if I've had a day where I know I've not moved very much, and I went for a walk, say I thought, right, I'm going to go for a walk because I haven't moved very much. What's the difference between that? Because that's obviously movement.
Yeah.
And we know that walking is good for us.
For sure.
How come I feel better if I go to a class rather than walk? So, obviously both is probably better, but if I had one or the other, what's the difference?
Both is so useful, isn't it? I mean, we need to get up and walk, and that gives different sorts of benefits to when we get on the reformer or we're doing some kind of Pilates class. Because when you're doing reformer, for example, you've got some resistance, you've got greater resistance to move against, to stimulate your body's natural responses. And it's massively, massively varied. Walking is not very varied. Walking is still moving in the same range of movement. So some people might know about planes of movement. And so the plane of movement is called sagittal, when you're just doing forwards and back movement. So when you go walking, you've been sat in your chair working forwards to your computer, and then you get up and you walk down the street and you're walking in that forward motion. And yes, in an ideal world, when we walk, we have a little bit more range of movement, because yes, like somebody yesterday in the studio was shocked when I told her that when you walk, your spine ideally rotates from side to side, has a little twist to it. And that's new information to a lot of people.
It is to me.
So so in Pilates, certainly the way we teach it, we promote a lot more rotational movement and a lot of other movements. So there's variety, which is what our body's designed to have. There's no straight lines. We're not doing just that sort of linear sagittal movement.
It's that twisting and turning, isn't it?
Correct.
And talking about the spine, I know that quote, isn't there, from Joseph Pilates, the founder of Pilates, that something about only being as old as your spine. Is that right? And what does that mean in practice? What's my spine got to do with how old I am?
It's so interesting, isn't it? And I mean, for me, I believe it reaches so much further even than that, because another thing that's super simple, yet many of us don't know, is that your ribs come around and dovetail into your spine. So if you imagine, they call it the rib cage.
So like here,
feel your ribs.
Yeah.
So everybody at home, you could feel your ribs. They call it the rib cage. My anatomy teacher always likes to use the term basket because it's holding and supporting your organs like a basket. It's not caging them like a prison. So if we think about that basket of your ribs come and dovetail into your spine. And so if your ribs and your spine are not moving well, that has a massive influence on your organ function. I know.
Feels a bit scary, doesn't it?
That's mind-blowing. I knew you would be like, oh, okay, this is huge.
Yeah.
So when you move your ribs, so if everybody at home, assuming you're not driving, whether you're sitting or standing, it doesn't matter. But if you just have your arms by your side, slide one arm down to one side and side bend over, and then side bend the other way. When you do that movement, you're moving your ribs, which is moving your spine, which is moving then all of your internal organs up in that basket of your ribs, your diaphragm and your lungs for one. And we need our breath to be full and in and out to make sure that we have health in all of the systems in our body. So yes, for sure, the spine is one piece of it, but it's like it stretches beyond the spine and the benefit of the bony health of the spine.
Yeah.
The bony health of your spine is hugely important because, well, we know, we talk a lot to women, and the bone density of all of our bones, in particular our spine, we have to work on maintaining our bone density because early in womanhood, we are starting to lose that bone density. So we need to keep moving so that we're putting load in our bones. So the bones go, oh yeah, I need to stay strong, and keep building and keep building. So if we don't put that load through the bones, they just go, all right, I'll just slowly go to sleep.
And that's why we might shrink. Okay, we don't want to shrink.
No, we're short enough while I am.
So that's what that saying was from Joseph Pilates. It was about if you're not moving your spine, basically, if you're not twisting and turning and it's stiff, when you're young,
you're old.
It's like you're old,
for sure. I love that quote too.
I know, it's a good one, isn't it? I think about it. So as a woman in my mid-40s, it's only been quite recently I've started to acknowledge some signs of aging in myself. We've talked about this before. I've started wearing glasses in the last couple of years. I know, you've probably been wearing them for years, but for me, it felt a really big thing. I've always got really good eyesight. And the optician said to me, this is true, that, oh, you're lucky to get to your age without needing glasses. Which made me feel really good.
Oh my gosh.
And I've also started to notice, I've got greys appearing in my hair. It's all underneath here at the bottom. Now I've been a bit smug, let's face it, for a few years that I didn't have any grey hairs. My sister's very similar in age. They went very grey white quite early.
Oh my goodness.
So I've been the smug little sister. I feel like it's harder not to put on any weight, and I'm wondering, is my metabolism slowing down? But basically, I'm getting older, I've got to face it. But it seems almost as if my body's surging ahead without permission.
Oh, yes.
And honestly, sometimes I feel like, oh, I could just give into it all and, take to my chair and grow old and just let it all happen. And
You'd shrink.
I'd
Shrink old, you wouldn't
I'd
grow old.
shrink. Yeah. Yeah. And I started wondering, why I was thinking like that. And then I realised in part, it's some of the rhetoric that you hear, as you get older, you don't move as much. And you slow down and you might sit in your chair a little bit more and you perhaps wouldn't do such active exercise. And perhaps in part I believe some of that as you get older, that's slowing down and that, you won't be able to do the things that you used to do. And
depressing.
I know, but I think it's a real mindset, isn't it? And I already knew you were going to groan at that, but I honestly think that it's a mindset that is quite prevalent, not just in
I'm
me.
sure.
Have you come across it before in clients that feel like, oh, well, I couldn't possibly do that because...
It's super interesting because my mindset is already very different to that.
Okay, I knew.
And actually, if you look, there are some nice guidelines that suggest doing more, sort of little and often throughout the week rather than less. So that's really important to note as well. And a lot of the clients that I work with, that I've worked with for a long time, they've actually got high aspirations of moving. It's more, and it goes back to one of our earlier podcasts when we talked about our Pilates identity.
Yes.
And it's people who are coming to Pilates maybe later and they don't necessarily know what's possible, what they can do, because they haven't been asked to do more movement, or they haven't had a history of doing a lot of movement or exercise in their life. And really, for me, I think my inspiration to see what is possible is my amazing granny.
Oh, yeah.
Because she was doing Keep Fit into her 90s. She was doing prayer exercises when she was at home during COVID and we couldn't get out and exercise. We hunted out this little box of like half kilogram weights that she must have had since the 80s. It was brilliant. And she just sat in her chair and did her exercises there. So I've really been blessed to have such a great role model. Yes. That exercise is something that you can and should continue to do for your health long term. My mentor, Lolita San Miguel, she's in her late 80s and she has kept going. She's not retired yet, no signs of retiring. Yeah. And she has kept going. So when she met Joseph Pilates in the 50s and 60s, she has done Pilates every single day since then.
And you know what? It shows, and you'll have to put this in the show notes. There was a photo that you posted at the recent conference you've been to, and the one thing that struck me was her straight back.
Oh, she is upright.
Amazing.
Yeah, she is.
She's upright. Not slumped in her chair.
Not at all. Amazing. Not at all.
But I think you mentioned about role models, and I think that's so important because the percentage of older people going to Pilates is presumably quite small in the whole.
Actually, in our case, we have so the majority of our clients are 50 plus.
Oh,
it's phenomenal.
And actually, when I've been to a class, usually it'll be a daytime one if I manage to get to a daytime one.
Yeah.
I can't do half the things those ladies and the men in the class are doing. Yeah, right.
Talk about inspiration and role models, because I've had classes where I've had somebody in their 80s doing, if you imagine a plank, you're on your hands and you're on your feet and you're on the reformer moving, and younger people, much, much younger, in their 30s, just in absolute awe that someone in their 80s can do this moving plank on the reformer. That's huge.
And it's funny because you've almost answered the next question I was going to ask you, which was, do you adapt exercises for older clients?
Do you know what? This is such a great question. We adapt classes or movements for the individual. No 80-year-old is the same, in the same way no 40-something-year-old is the same.
Yeah.
It needs to be for the person and for their goals. If somebody comes and they said, okay, I've just had a diagnosis of osteoporosis, so that's where we're having reduced bone density, then I will adapt, but I'm not regressing. And I think that's really important to say, is that we're not pulling back and restricting. We're going, okay, what can be done? How much can we move? How much can we progress you on where you are right now? I think that the automatic that we do a chair-based class because we're such and such an age, I want people to move, and if that's what's available, go for it, definitely. And does it need to be chair? Like, are we potentially restricting someone from doing what they could be doing? And I think a lot of that comes back to where you started, which is mindset. What do we believe is possible? What do we think we should be doing versus actually what can we do?
Yeah.
Like, what can we do? Because we can do usually more than we think.
Yeah. It's
So,
interesting,
yeah.
actually. It makes me think of the last reformer class that I did. We were talking about mindset because there was something that I just couldn't do, and I knew it was a blocker for me.
Oh,
It was sitting on the foot bar. I'm probably
Oh,
not going to
yes.
describe this very well. You know,
gymnast.
yes,
Oh, it's so much fun. So much fun.
just it wouldn't.
Bum up, head down can be a little tricky.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. And it's not something you do in everyday life,
no.
but it's so great for your spine
And then
and great
tried
for
to do it
bone
from
density.
standing. Was it from standing with that?
Yeah.
Right? Oh yeah, just it was
So much fun.
but frustrating because I knew it was my mind that was the blocker.
Yeah, but you know, Anthony Robbins famously says that you know, if you think about a toddler learning to walk, you're not going to just say, "Oh, just give up."
Yeah,
You're going to keep encouraging and finding different ways and being positive and making it fun. And what happens to us as grown-ups that we just go, "Oh well, I'll just give up. I'll just not," you know,
move to a light bit of stretching.
and move to stretching. You know, actually, can we be playful? I think there's a lot to be said, and there's some great studies into play and play therapy and the benefits as adults for having a more playful approach to things, because then we're taking a little bit of the pressure off ourselves. And then when we take the pressure off and we're just having fun, it's just, I say to people, it's just Pilates. We don't need to take this quite so seriously. We could just have fun and play like you would have gone and played in the climbing frame in the local park when you were wee. Just do that. This is our grown-up climbing frame.
Yeah, and I love that point. I love that point because it's just a mindset, isn't it? I was reading an article from the Office of National Statistics, ONS, and it was reporting that over the last 40 years, life expectancy in the UK has been increasing. There has been a blip because of COVID actually recently, which you'd probably expect. But that life expectancy for females in the UK is currently generally about 82 years. But then I came across a calculator to find out your life expectancy and your chances of living to be 100. Now I'm thinking, probably not very high, and you know, I don't know what I was thinking really.
That is so weird that you can put in your details and it will tell you.
Yeah, I don't know how scientific it is because you just put in your gender and year of birth, so it's very, very general. But so of course I had to do it, couldn't stop. So it reckons my average life expectancy will be 87. But there's a 1 in 4 chance I'll live to 95 and a 1 in 10 chance I'll live to be 99.
Wow.
And it's when the result comes in, it pops up. Were you surprised? You're not the only one. Anecdotal evidence suggests that we typically underestimate our life expectancy. And I think I certainly have, even though I wouldn't have said, oh, I'm only going to live to be, 75 or whatever. It hasn't really occurred to me like almost how much longer I've got, because we talk about middle age but really what's that all based on? And
that means we're there now.
But basically, it's not all data, but basically, if I take to my chair now, which is what I was proposing,
yes,
I could be sat there for at least another 40 years maybe even 50. So it's probably
Wow.
not time to call it a day on
Yeah, when you
movement
start to think
now.
about it that way. No, you definitely don't need to call it a day on movement. But I can just imagine as well, you know, one of the things that I notice is people getting out of chairs, you know, getting up and down. And somebody said to me, I just feel like it makes me feel better when I groan. You know the groans and moans. And it's like you hit this point and you start making these sounds to get in and out of a chair. And I'm like, but why? Why is that going to actually help? Because what about if you went, you're like a Ribena jumping out of the chair rather than the groaning. Imagine the different release of endorphins. You'd be happy getting out of the chair rather than making the moans and groans. You know, where does that even come from? So I think that's the challenge. You need to
Definitely.
be like jumping out of the chair with excitement.
Jumping out of the chair, but it also got me thinking about like quality of life, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a quote, isn't there, from Joseph Pilates? What is it? Is it?
Oh, it's something to do with we retire too early. And so when we're and we die too young, and this is because we're not staying active, isn't it? So if you're retiring in the prime of your life, then well, what are we doing that for? You know, we're missing out on all these great opportunities. And he felt like people should keep going because it was the stopping working, retiring, stopping moving, stopping having structure to their day that was actually making them old. It was part of the contributing factor to making people feel older and age too young. So, you know, we need to take a leaf out of Lolita's book and just keep going. You know, we were in Las Vegas recently presenting at a conference and she was there in her 80s. That's just what, you know, a different mindset.
Yeah.
We all have to work full time, but maybe we have, you know.
But it's not necessarily always about work, is
it's
it?
just active, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's lots and lots and lots of things we can do to be active. Yeah.
So, you know, all being well, I'm probably about halfway through my life. I worked out from that.
I know.
But in my mind, I'm still about 21.
Yes, I'm frozen at 22. That's my internal age.
Actually, I think I'm being frozen about 26.
Oh,
about 26 I've been frozen, around about that. But honestly, it's made me start to wonder, okay, so what do I want from the second half of my life? What do I want to be able to do? What do I want to be able to achieve? And then I also need to know what I need to do to be able to get there. And part of that has to be about staying active.
For sure.
You know, and it's funny, until recently, I was very much about living in the present. And I think most people are, aren't they? You know, as a child in my 20s and 30s, I'm not sure I was really thinking about the impact of what I was doing day to day on later life, because it seems so far off.
It does.
And particularly probably movement wise, it was either because it felt good in that moment, so think dancing in a nightclub, or it might have been part of the latest fitness regime I was on, you know, spinning, body pump. I was into all that stuff. And I guess it was back to that instant results thing. And it's only since I've started to see these, and they are smaller signs of aging, and it's helpfully been pointed out to me.
Not by me, just me.
And I've really started to think about how I can help future me.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's not uncommon in kind of mid-40s. And it's possibly one of the reasons why people tend to come to Pilates when they're a little bit older. What do you think?
I 100% agree. We see an influx around that age group because you suddenly kind of start to recognize the value of your body, or you realize you're not indestructible.
Yes.
And I remember really feeling like I could do anything. I was so not about the future.
Yeah.
I absolutely remember that. And it does, it takes an adaptation of your mindset to start to go, okay, I can still do what I want to do, and I need to invest in my body to be able to do those things.
Mhm.
And wouldn't it be great if we could start to educate on that much earlier, so we don't have to go, oh, I've injured my whatever.
Yeah.
You know, we see it often with what do they call it? Weekend warriors.
Oh yeah.
You know,
yeah.
people who are just sort of desk-based all week
Mm.
and then go off and, I don't know, play netball once a week or play football once a week, and then they start to develop little niggles and injuries because they're playing in the body they think they were in, you know, that they're still in their 20-year-old body, but they're in their 40-something-year-old body.
Yeah.
And they're still trying to play in it like it's 20 and not doing any warm-ups or cool downs or anything
Stretching.
to maintain. Well, this is the thing, to maintain or to give their body the tools that it needs to do the activity they want to do. And if we could just think about, like, you know, we brush our teeth on a regular basis so that we prevent decay, we don't need to get fillings, we don't lose our teeth. What are we doing in the same way for our whole entire body?
Yeah.
You know, we eat healthily and all of these things that we do, but are we moving? Are we having nutritious movement to fuel what we want to do with our bodies in life?
Yeah, and we might think about diet, but not as much. Movement, probably not as much. And you know, there's a meme I've seen that no one ever regretted going for a run, and I used to think about that when I used to run quite a bit. Like if I, you know, didn't fancy going, like no, I'm not going to regret it. But it should be one for Pilates, shouldn't they? Because whoever regretted a Pilates class?
I can't imagine. You just wouldn't,
No.
would you? Because you always feel better. Whatever the question, Pilates is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose I think about Pilates in terms of helping with mobility, like now and in the future. But can you tell me a bit more about how it helps? How can a regular Pilates practice help to safeguard mobility in the future? So would it, for example, like some of the older people that I know, and younger ones actually, you know, it might be their knees or their hips have gone, or can it help with things as specific as that, or is it just general well-being?
I mean, there's obviously general well-being and the mind-body connection, which helps with your mental health, of course, too, and how we then deal with aging. But there's often things that happen as we're getting older, and with the forward head posture that can come with the working at desks or just through age, that we start to take a shorter step. It's like called a shortened gait. So you don't stride out as much.
Right.
And when you do a shorter gait, you're far more likely to trip and fall.
Oh, that's interesting.
So tripping and falling is a massive cause of death because people fall, break their hip. And I think we've said this before, you know, they fall, break their hip, and they can't do anything. They might be at home alone, and then they can't, you know, so we need to, and Pilates is brilliant, absolutely brilliant at improving gait. And if you think about, so gait's just a posh word for walking.
Yeah.
If you think walking is one of our most fundamental, so there's two things: getting out of the chair, so sit to stand, and walking.
Yeah.
They're like measures, if you like.
Yeah.
Of your age and your ability. Okay, so Pilates is going to teach you everything you need to be able to get out of a chair and to walk well and continuously. The way that it works is like the you know, reformer, for example, or any of the apparatus, is giving you support and feedback. It's taking some of the load of gravity off you so it can help you to feel supported, to find those connections to your whole body. And you can feel it from head to toe. Everything is involved. I was saying yesterday, remember, everything is a whole body event when you're doing Pilates. It's not just, you know, this is for your arms, this is for your legs. It's for everything all of the time. So that support means that you can find the movement in your spine in a very healthy way.
So we're not isolating any one area. So we wouldn't necessarily be working on hips. It might be something that helps the hips, but we wouldn't necessarily be.
So what we would say is that there's an emphasis in the movement that you're doing. So the emphasis might be on opening up through the front of your hip,
Yeah.
but your opening your hip doesn't work in isolation. It's opening because it's getting support from the back of your hip,
Yeah.
and you might be weight bearing on your hands at the same time. So you're never doing something in isolation, but there might feel like an emphasis in one area.
So by using the
Yeah.
equipment, put in simple terms,
Yeah,
does it
sorry.
make the hard stuff look easier? A bit seem easier?
Oh my goodness, yeah. You do
Okay.
like beautiful, dramatic things, and it's supported by the feedback of the equipment.
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I know you often talk about helping the grey matter too when you're explaining the choreography of an exercise.
Mm.
So thinking about, again, growing
Yeah.
older and perhaps not being as sharp. This is what's, you know, and I think this is some of the rhetoric that's
Yeah.
come to me. And you know what? And I don't know whether I've got too much on. I've started doing it with the names, going through the names of the boys and the cat.
Oh,
Before I
brilliant.
get to, like, what's that all about? So please tell me Pilates can help us mentally too.
It definitely can, because we're always coordinating, and that's neural coordination. So your brain and your body talking to one another and making things happen. It's a bit like doing a puzzle, you know, Sudokus or something.
Mm.
Pilates is like Sudoku in your body. So that is stimulating from the movement we do all of that grey matter.
Oh.
Because you're doing things where you've got to work with both sides of your brain at the same time. So
Yes.
good for you. So
So
good
is that
for you.
why we might do a sequence of,
Yeah.
of exercises? We might build on to something.
Yeah, because here's the thing, if it's also about your attention too, and what we deal with in real life. You don't do things in real life. Well, maybe you do, but like when you're at your computer, it's probably quite same kind of
Very
range
functional.
of movement
Yeah.
all the time. But actually, even when you're walking down the street, you're working and moving in different ranges, and you're listening to something, and you see somebody you wave to, and
Yeah.
you do multiple things at the same time. So if you just laid down and just did something really, really bland
Yes.
in movement, it's not going to be really stimulating your brain. Then you're going to go wandering off and think about your shopping list. Then you're not actually getting the mind-body connection. You're not getting the meditative type benefits, and you're not stimulating your grey matter. So there's a lot of reasons for that.
Presumably
actually.
that's why I come up with some good ideas.
Oh, great.
Pilates
Yeah.
classes.
Yeah.
It's like an unblock, isn't
It's
it?
an unblock.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm.
So let's end the episode as we always do with your three, Claire shares, three pearls of wisdom.
Yes.
What three things do you do now in terms of movement that you believe will help ensure that you have the future that you would like, and that will help other people to think about what they can do today for themselves tomorrow?
So one of the things that I do, we've said this before, but it is hugely, hugely important, is every single morning I get a golf ball and I roll my feet. So I literally just wake up, I put my feet on the floor, and I start rolling my foot on that golf ball.
We've talked about this before because I tried it and hated it, and you told me to sit down and do it.
Sit down and
Yeah.
do it, exactly. And the thing with that is that it's keeping my foot mobile. It's making sure that I can feel my foot, so that it's going to reduce the risk of trips and falls in older age. So that's really
Brilliant.
important to me. Another kind of fun thing that I do is in our kitchen, I put the things I use most in the cupboards down low, right?
Yeah.
Because then every time I need my coffee cup, I have to squat down and get that thing. So I put everything in that. So it's almost like an upside down kitchen.
Yeah, because I think ergonomically, kitchen design, you'd have them above the kettle, wouldn't you? You just reach slightly, get your mug.
Ergonomically.
I'm
getting up now. Ergonomically, what does that actually mean? So in some cases, we really do need, for example, an ergonomic chair. I can see the usefulness of that.
Yeah.
However, anything that just holds us in a static position is not ergonomic to the way our body's designed to function.
Just convenient.
It's not ergonomic, it's just convenience, it's ease, it's reducing the movement that we do rather than inviting us to move. So that would be my third tip.
That's a great point. Yeah.
It's just look for invitations to move. So I was traveling recently and they had this thing, I don't even know what you call it, but you know, like it's like an escalator, but it's flat.
Oh, a travelator.
Travelator.
Oh, at the airport. Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And so people just stand on them
Yeah.
and just glide along.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even dream. I will walk there where the escalator is, pick up my bag, I'm climbing the stairs at the side of the escalator. So looking for opportunities to move. So I always look for opportunities to move.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think that I'm really going to try and take those on board. I am off to reorganise the kitchen.
Brilliant.
My husband might not be too.
He'll be like, where's this? Where's that?
Yeah. It's just so easy, isn't it, to live in the moment? And sometimes that's the right thing to do. But the things that you've just talked about are actually just adjustments, aren't they, to
Well, it's
life?
not to ask you to do anything more in your life. It's not about fitting anything else
Yeah.
in, because I think that can be a barrier for people. And actually moving more is simpler than you think.
Yeah. And so we can make those few adjustments just to improve our future lives and shape who and how we want to be. So thank you so much, Claire. I feel really motivated now.
Thank you so much, Sophie. It was great to chat again. So we'll be sharing a new theme in the next episode, and I look forward to sharing more then. In the meantime, do let us know what you think of this episode. Like, share, do all of those things that you know you need to do to help other people to find us. And we'd really love you to let us know if there's anything you'd like us to cover in future episodes. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.